Hey YouTube, welcome back to Red Cell Guerrilla. Today we're going to go over defeating OP4 or the opposing forces. In our agenda today, we're going to go over the disclaimer like always. Who's OP4? Why do guerrillas even care? Violence from OP4, OP4 organization, OP4 operations, and can OP4 be defeated? A disclaimer. The discussion on the slide deck, conversation, and the videos contained in this channel are not explicit directions. It's only designed by Red Cell Guerrilla to be informative and instructional for educational purposes. Red Cell Guerrilla is not telling viewers to do anything illicit, illegal, or anything at all. This is just a discussion based on materials that are open to the public. Most of what is discussed on this channel is an explanation of ATP 3-21.8, the Infantry Rifle Platoon and Squad, which is an instructional tactical publication that is open for public distribution from the United States Army. Now, opposing forces. Who are they again? We already know that they are going to be probably gangs, gang members, invading militaries, which there are several militaries already here, several blue hat militaries. Antifa and other groups that are conducting violent operations. And then some of opposing forces are against Blue Force as well, but they are Red Cell adjacent. So folks who are providing us food and folks who are providing us health care as guerrillas and informants. And informants are very difficult to fool around with because they can be human for us and human for the enemy. Really just depends on who pays them more typically. Now, why does a guerrilla even care about these guys? Well, destroying OP4 requires a few things. One, you're heavily going to have to play the detective. Gangs are probably going to attempt to move in and scout for an area and are likely going to need to be ventilated quickly to ensure that they get the message that they aren't welcome in your county. Other operation or professional rioters and protesters are also going to need to be removed. Nobody actually wants to get shot, so if you run them out the first and second time, even the white cell counterparts that are sending those professional rioters in, like Antifa or Black Lives Matter, they are going to decide that it's probably safer to stay out of your business. Remember, we've already started going over the fact that not only are we targeting these OP4 groups, but we are targeting the white cell groups and that mouthpiece of the white cell being the dude with the camera and the dude with the microphone, dudette, whatever, I don't really care. They are not there to help your cause. They are only going to paint you in a bad light. It's not going to matter who or what a bad guy actually is. They are always going to paint you as the military violent extremist, which, okay, cool, I get it, because now you've been pushed into the corner and you're going to have to be some type of militia, and you're going to have to be very violent and very extreme for them to get the fucking message to, awesome, man, great for you to show up here, goodbye, right? So we don't want them to be there anymore. Now, what flavors of violence does OP4 push out? Usually gang violence. Gangs come in a lot of flavors, but the violence of unemployed men and women who are making good money selling drugs and weapons is probably not going to stop. But you can help by seeking them out and destroying them in your county. If they aren't hurting anybody, then sure, I guess, allow them to operate at a lower level. The issue is that they probably are hurting folks. Fentanyl is a major killer, which, while I am of the mind that, hey, if some drug head is the one that decided to do drugs, awesome, that was of their own volition and their free will. The issue is whenever you end up getting fentanyl-laced contact points and some child happens to touch a doorknob that a druggie happened to touch and then sticks it in their mouth and then they die and nobody figures out why until a toxicology report comes out later, right? Does this happen an awful lot? No, it doesn't. But there's also a lot of just nasty stuff, byproducts of using the drugs, like nasty needles constantly and consistently in gutters where kids, last I checked, still go outside to play every now and again or go play out in the street or whatever. Having that kind of trash, that's just giving the spread of Hep A, Hep B. You don't want any of the hepatitis or bloodborne diseases, right, going through, and especially hitting small kids, right, or anybody really, right. You want to stay healthy as well, so it's nice to go outside once in a while in some flip-flops and not get stabbed in the toes with a needle if you happen to live in a city, or just, like I said before, get out of those areas. Anyway, if you start targeting the lower level dealers and hurt their current operations, you're probably going to end up forcing them to come out of hiding, and they're probably going to try to come find you. They are easily defeated, though. Similar things have happened in the 80s when people actually went and defended themselves. But this is just a one-off story here, but there were plenty of times in the 80s and 90s with, the old rooftop Koreans who are up on top of their shop saying, "You're not going to burn down my business." And folks are like, "We're coming to burn down your business." And they're like, "Nope, because we got guns and we'll just shoot you." Right? That's kind of the position that la-di-da-di everybody is being stuck in now. But again, similar thing happened in the 80s and 90s when some gangsters thought, and I think it was Crips actually, thought they were going to attack the home of an Army Ranger. He and his buddies ended up being at the house, having dinner, asked his buddies to stay, and they defended his home with no loss of life on either side. But these folks were coming to kill him. They started shooting, and his fire team started shooting back, and the gangs decided that it's a little too hot and heavy to be going after some Army Rangers, and they best get the fuck out of there. So they did. I think a few of the gangsters ended up in the hospital. I don't think any of the military folks ended up being hurt at all. But, yeah, whatever. Antifa, on the other hand, I think they are much easier to identify and destroy. These guys are probably going to be wearing all black and have red patches, red bandanas, something that's black and red, right? Because those are their colors, or have their black and red flag with the Antifa. And they have websites that are recruiting often, and while they might have some stringent recruiting standards, it looks more like a find your chapter kind of thing. The violence they produce is more of a win and not if scenario. They think they want some kind of communistic regime and that fascists are bad because their name is Antifa, while at the same time being fascists because they want you to obey their fake rules and regulations that don't exist, otherwise they're going to come burn down your town. Which is just obey our rules or, get violently attacked, right? Which is fascism. But yeah, and they don't care, right? They literally just went down to, I think, Atlanta, right? Atlanta, Georgia, and burned down a training facility for police. And that's not a target for Red Cell, right? A training facility is not a target for Red Cell. Maybe the people are. But it's a training facility for police and for the fire department. Fire departments, I think, are great and fantastic because they aren't doing anything other than attempting to save people's lives. A little bit different than somebody with a gun on their hip coming to attack you because you didn't pay your bill, right? So, yeah, it was just something that I didn't understand. Also, that was a huge waste of taxpayer dollar. And maybe it was hit because the White Cell members who had that built in the first place decided that, hey, maybe the insurance money is worth more than the facility itself. Maybe that was something. I don't know. Maybe that's something to look into. But, yeah, they're not going to do anything good ever, so the best thing that we can do is destroy them, and whenever they're like, hey, we're here peaceably, yeah, they're going to be there peaceably until there's enough of them to not be peaceful, right? So just, you might as well find those chapters and fuck them up. Now, OP4 organization, if you think it's a bad organization, it's probably OP4. If you think it's some kind of gang or whatever, they're probably OP4 to you, right? Because some OP4s, right, they're the good guy. I think we'll put those more in the green forces counter for Red Cell members. Some government organizations I would still place in OP4 groups. They still need to be taken out. but they're not necessarily Blue 4, like most FEMA personnel. They don't necessarily have guns, but they are willing to run and put you into a camp and not let you leave once you're forced to be there. But remember, these executive branch groups like FEMA, like DPS, like DEA, like the Bureau of Land Management version of BLM, these guys all have their own Blue 4 Guns Hot teams. Okay, so while not all of them are Blue 4, because they don't necessarily carry guns everywhere they're going and necessarily come to attack you, but they are totally willing to put you into a camp or put you into a prison and then hold you there. Those guys are also OP4. Now, OP4 operations. Gangs are still going to be gangs. Expect them to probably sell drugs, guns, rape, and kill. Antifa, we already know that they're just going to burn shit down. Now, the foreign national militaries, that is kind of the thing that I would be the most worried about. There are already foreign national militaries here. Most of them are allies of the United States, or rather allies of the white cell of the United States. They are not your ally. They don't have a United States Constitution. I think that having the freedom to speak your mind and the freedom to own weapons and the freedom to defend yourself against the government, these are things that go above those Blue 4 military, right? I think this would go above their members' heads. The French military is already in the United States. The English, British military, the UK military, they are already in the United States. The German military, just about anybody who's over from Western Europe, they already have members here who are training. And as soon as the United States military decides, well, probably not, because I think most of the guys who were going to defend you and your rights, they probably already got out already, right? It's not something that they're going to mess with. They're not going to stay in and then defend your rights. They're going to get out and then probably fight for their own rights, right? And then we've seen that happen a lot already over the past year. I mean, 60,000 troops left last year because they were forced out because they didn't want to get the jab, right? So saying no to inoculations was a big thing for them, and the Army said, well, you need this inoculation to be operationally effective, and that turned out to be a lie, and a lot of guys who stayed in are having problems. They're having heart issues. They're having the exact same issues. So, and then they got rid of 60,000 troops in a 3-month period of time last year. So I don't think that the military is doing as well as it thinks it's doing. And then you have a giant mass of UN troops, right? So UN peacekeepers, they're already here. Also, we have other military targets that are here already that definitely need to be shot at, namely Chinese foreign police who are here to attack Chinese citizens who tried to get away from the Chinese government, right? But they are here to quote-unquote protect those Chinese nationals, but really what it's turned out to be is that most of these are Chinese fobs that are here, so I would count them as OP4, and you probably want to get rid of them. Are they going to start shooting at U.S. civilians? Well, that's one of those things where it's like, maybe not, but I think they do make sense as being OP4. You might as well try to get rid of them and destroy their buildings, their fobs, immediately as soon as possible to ensure that they don't have a foothold. If they have any communications equipment, you know that we already know, right? We got spy balloons fucking everywhere. We already know. This is stupid, right? So at this point in time, our government might not be at open war, but the people should probably just be like, hey, yeah, not cool, not koshers. We're going to see you later, as in never, and put you 6 feet under, right? So that's it. Can OP4 be defeated? Yes, of course they can, right? This is one of those super easy things, right? We've already talked about what this channel is kind of about, right? This is how do we defeat a governmental force through violence, right? Because it is doable. This is the same government that's already made soft threats against you and said, well, you can't defeat us. You'd need tanks and you need, F-15s and F-16s. Well, they can't get enough pilots that would actually shoot bombs on our own people. So there's one. They can't get enough of their tanks up and running constantly and consistently. So there's two, and most of the United States is actually not super traversable. There's a few hard areas where it's like desert and shit where the tanks can go. But I mean, they got rid of the tanks at Knox on purpose because they burrow into the ground. Like, it's crazy. And the new tanks are way heavier than the old tanks. The V3 of the M1 Abrams is like another 10 or 15 tons, empty, heavier than the V2. Right, and all that armor is really awesome for saving the life of the tank, not necessarily for saving the life of the crew members inside. And they're not going anywhere, right? Like, yeah, Texas and maybe Oklahoma and maybe Kansas and stuff, but half of those, they can't cross the bridges in the Appalachians. They can't cross the bridges that are up in the mountains. The tanks are too fucking heavy to do that, right? So a tank is not going to come out into the middle of Appalachia. The tanks are not coming out to the Cascades. The tanks are not going out to the Rockies, right? They just don't have a lot of roads where they're going to be able to come out to the middle of nowhere with a tank. Strikers, maybe, right? But a tank, probably not. So, yeah, like, what are you going to do? But yeah, can they be defeated? Yes, kill them. We've already proven that these OP4 groups are extremely violent, and they will stop if you kill them. You have to get it into your mind as Red Cell that this is a war. Get a positive ID of that target, let lead fly, lay the scunion, mix metal with meat, fuck them up, however you want to say it. Right? That is it. Now, conclusion. We've gone over the disclaimer. Who again is OP4? Why does a chimp care? OP4 violence, OP4 organization, and OP4 operations. Can you win? Yes, you can. In transmission.